Robert Joseph Long was given the name Robert Joseph Long on October 14, 1953, in the West Virginia town of Canova. He spent the majority of his childhood in Florida with his mother, after his parents Luella and Joe separated when Bobby Joe was a young boy. Early in his life, Long experienced a number of troubling events. He failed the first grade and was injured in a couple of accidents. As a result of his mother, Luella, who worked in a bar and frequently wore racy clothing to work and brought different men home with her, he developed a strong dislike for women. Adding insult to injury, for the first 12 or 13 years of his life, he shared a bed with her. The age of 13 was when Long met the woman who would become his wife, Cynthia. They were married in 1974 and had 2 children within a year, but the stress of parenthood caused the marriage to become more volatile than it had been previously. Aside from that, Long was involved in a serious accident around this time, in which he was struck by a vehicle while riding his motorcycle and was subsequently hospitalized for several weeks. Afterwards, Cynthia claimed that, following the accident, Long's temperament changed. She claimed that, while he had always been short with her, he became physically violent toward her and impatient with their children. Along with this, Long had developed an unusually overt, compulsive, and often dangerous desire for sexual encounters. Crime analysts would later attribute Long's violent nature to a sexual obsession, labeling him as a sexual sadist. As soon as Cynthia filed for divorce in 1980, Long moved in with a female friend, Sharon Richards, who would later come forward and accuse him of sexual assault and battery on her. Long was charged with sending an inappropriate, sex-infused letter and photographs to a 12-year-old Florida girl in the fall of 1983, and he was sentenced to a short jail term and probation as punishment. As a result of his criminal activities, Long went on to commit sexual assaults against women. To do this, he would look for sale signs on houses and search through classified ads for furniture and other items, which would lead to an opportunity to break into the home of an unsuspecting woman and force himself on her, according to the report. The police claim that during this time period, Long engaged in more than 50 acts of sexual abuse. After making another criminal leap in the spring of 1984, Long committed his first murder in the fall of the same year. Long met a young prostitute named Artis Wick in March 1984, initially with the intention of fulfilling his sexual needs. In the aftermath of his assault and abuse of Wick, he came to the conclusion that he was unsatisfied, and he strangled and killed her. Lang spotted a young woman named Lana Long while driving down Nebraska Avenue in Tampa in May 1984. Lang stopped to talk to her. He pulled up to Lana and offered her a ride, which she accepted, but he soon pulled his car off the road and pulled a knife from his waistband pocket. As soon as Lana started screaming and attempting to fight him, Long tied her up and drove her to a more remote road, where he shot and strangled her. Following a few days of searching, Lana Long's body was discovered face down with her hands bound behind her back and her legs spread widely apart, according to the police. Michelle Simms, a prostitute of 22 years, was Long's next victim. Having enticed her to his vehicle, Long beat and RPD'd her before repeatedly slashing her throat. When the same material, a red nylon fiber, was found on both women, detectives were able to link Simms's death to Lana Long's. Elizabeth Loudenbach, Long's fourth victim, was discovered 17 days after she was killed, according to the police. Detectives discovered Loudenbach's body, which was badly decomposed and fully clothed. She was lying on her back with her clothes on when they discovered her. In contrast to Long's other victims, Loudenbach, according to police, was not a drug user, prostitute, or stripper like the others. Long's fifth victim, a young prostitute named Chanel Williams, had been walking down a Tampa street when she was picked up by the masked vigilante. Long shot Williams in the neck after sexually assaulting her and attempting to strangle her. Long was convicted of the crime. The bodies of Karen Din's friend and Kimberly Hops were discovered by police shortly after the first murder. Lisa McVeigh, a 17-year-old riding her bicycle through northern Tampa, was spotted by Long in early November 1984. When McVeigh refused to go with him to his car, he coerced her into performing oral intercourse and then dragged her to his apartment, where he RPD'd her repeatedly and even took a bath with her. After treating McVeigh like a sex slave for more than 24 hours, Long, in contrast to his other victims, allowed her to live. Ultimately, it was McVeigh's testimony that led police to Long's location. Long murdered 2 more women, Virginia Johnson and Kim Swan, after releasing McVeigh from custody. Although McVeigh had only given a brief description of her assailant and his vehicle, Long was apprehended on November 16, 1984, at a movie theater not far from his home in Tampa. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that the mysterious red fibers that had assisted police in linking two murder victims matched the carpeting in the interior of his car. During his time in custody, Long was also linked to the recently discovered murder of Vicki Elliott, which was discovered in a police investigation. During the Virginia Johnson trial, Long was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death in April 1985. A few months later, Long admitted to 8 Hillsborough County homicides and was sentenced to prison. In fact, Wick's body was not discovered until several days after Long's arrest, and because he did not enter a guilty plea to Wick's murder until many months after submitting his original confession, Long was never formally charged with her death. Long was found guilty of the other 8 Hillsborough County homicides, as well as several other charges, and sentenced to death. For the murder of Michelle Simms, he was sentenced to death by electrocution in the summer of 1986. He had previously received more than 24 life imprisonment sentences. In police interviews, Long admitted to committing 10 murders but hinted at the possibility of additional crimes. A Florida prison, the Union Correctional Institution, houses Long while he serves his sentence. His execution has been postponed several times over the course of several years, despite the fact that he was twice sentenced to death in a single trial. This man continues to wait for his execution.